Hi everybody, Antonio Ruiz here, and this is Antonio with Tech. Today I want to discuss how Stadia has evolved in the last year. In my previous video, I discussed the pros, the cons, and everything in between. But today the video is more about how Stadia has improved, how it hasn't, and where I think it's headed. So let's jump right in. It's been a wild ride for Stadia. In its first year, from the code fiasco to the slow deployment of games due to COVID-19, and the slow deployment of features along the way, Stadia has come a long way for sure. When I joined as a founder, I knew that it would take some time for AAA games to launch on Stadia, and that a lot of features will launch later on, but I did not expect features to take almost a year to launch, and some of them still are either in beta or with no path to being launched. Google did say that the system itself will improve as more people join and as more feedback was received, and that is something that they have kept their promise with. We can see how from the first month that it launched, where you could barely play on any other device other than the Chromecast Ultra that they provided, to now being able to play on your mobile device through Wi-Fi or your laptop with barely any issues. Of course, you need a very, very fast Wi-Fi. I'm not saying that you can play with any sort of Wi-Fi or that you can play with your mobile data. That is still a long way to go. So what are my thoughts after a year? And what are the biggest improvements since Stadia launched? The first is performance and stability. From where Stadia launched back in 2019 to now, the performance and stability has been a huge jump. I remember the first few months, it was at times extremely hard to play games that required fast responses or games that require fast inputs from the controller, sometimes would lag behind. Across the board now, whether you play on your laptop or your Chromecast, the difference is minor, as you can see. For the most part, Stadia is pretty stable, unless you have an ISP that restricts the amount of data you use or live in an area with spotty internet service. There's still, of course, a lot of shuttering and at times lagging, especially on certain games, including 2K21, as you can see here, or other similar games. Overall, for all being streamed directly from Google servers, it is impressive and has come a long way since they launched, so that's something to give props to Google for that. The second thing is quality and AAA games. It wasn't until recently that we started seeing new AAA games being announced to be released on Stadia at the same time as console editions were being launched. In the beginning, the biggest AAA games that we had was Destiny at launch, and then Red Dead Redemption 2, which was also a launch title, but that aside, let's just move on into the few recent ones that have been released. And these include Watch Dogs Legion, and most recently a few days ago, Cyberpunk. And these two, specifically Cyberpunk, I think has been one of the biggest launch for Stadia. And Cyberpunk seems to be bringing a lot of publicity. There's an article that states that Stadia is one of the best places to play the game with minor hiccups, especially when compared to the PS4 and the older Xbox generation, and even some of the PC version and some of the new next-gen consoles. Cyberpunk, if you have an excellent connection and you have the capability of either a display that is 4K and HDR with surround sound 5.1, then Cyberpunk has those capabilities if you do have the hardware for it. So you can play it at 4K, the HDR, and the 5.1 surround sound. I do not have that, so I cannot play it. I just play it at the 1080p maximum quality that I can play it. But I do have the capability, if I did have a 4K monitor, to play it with that. Just mentioning again Cyberpunk, it literally spiked up in usage in terms of Stadia. And the down detector did detect Google Stadia down for about an hour, but Stadia was able to very quickly pick it up and just fix the problem, and everybody was playing the game pretty smoothly compared to the PC version or even some users on Xbox and the PS4 reporting some weird glitches. The next thing that I would say that could push Stadia to grow would be Far Cry 6, whenever that comes out next year. We don't even have a date, I think somewhere in March or April, but it's probably going to get delayed again, so I guess we'll see. Of course, the library of games continue to expand, and I know that Stadia has plans to bring more exclusive games and to keep bringing new AAA studios and developers to port their games. It seems like the Stadia library will slowly build up over time, and as more users sign up, more developers will be willing to port their games into Stadia's platform. The third thing, and I'll put a big asterisk, I know I've said this multiple times, but playing on 5G capable devices. This is something that I have been so excited for since they started rolling out, to be able to play on your phone data plan, especially with a 5G enabled device like the Google Pixel 5G. I tried to play it, and honestly, every time that I try to play with the 5G mobile data, it's literally unplayable. And of course, the data now is a little bit reduced in terms of how much data it uses. So right now it's between 2 to 5 gigabytes of playing on your phone at 720p. I literally can't get it to run very smooth. I'm gonna try also to play outside to see if that helps anymore, but 5G phones are the perfect phone for this. But as you can see here, it does suffer a lot of lagging and shuttering on games. Even on Cyberpunk, I literally can't even play it. Now let's switch to playing with the Wi-Fi enabled and see the difference. As you can see here, when you switch it back to the Wi-Fi, it's a lot more smooth. It runs as it's supposed to be running, very fun to play on the Wi-Fi specifically on your phone. The other thing is live streaming from Stadia. This feature, something that I've been waiting for a while now. A few days ago, Stadia started to roll out direct live streaming to YouTube, and this feature comes at a perfect time with Cyberpunk already out. But, however, if you want to plug a camera to stream, you will still need to use OBS, Streamlabs OBS, or any other third-party software. Stadia Direct Streaming only allows for game audio, or your audio/party audio, and you're only limited to streaming on YouTube. So if you're looking to stream on the multiple platforms, the feature is just not there. And you also can't put a camera yet, so that's also an issue too. For me, I stream the games on Twitch, and the few Stadia games I have streamed, I have a weird connection through the Google Chromecast Ultra plus a splitter, and then connected to the capture card, and then you use OBS or Streamlabs OBS to connect it to Twitch or stream to any other device. Recently, one of the biggest announcements was Crowd Choice and Crowd Play Beta. At the end of the year stream, as they call it, Stadia announced both Crowd Choice and Crowd Play Beta for Stadia. Crowd Choice and Crowd Play were exciting features announced back in 2019, and to finally see them get rolled out is something quite exciting. So what exactly is Crowd Choice? Crowd Choice is a new way for content creators to engage with their fans via YouTube Live by allowing viewers to make choices that will ultimately affect the game they're playing in real time. The Crowd Play Beta, on the other hand, allows the viewer to jump into the stacked area of the game along with their favorite streamers. But however, this feature is only in beta, and only a handful of Stadia games are capable of using this feature and have support for that feature as well. I guess in the what next area would be the next gen improvements. At launch, Stadia teased how they could enable dual GPU to enhance the experience, and most recently a developer leaked them having access to Stadia's ray tracing and said hardware called Stadia 2.0 was being in development and they had access to Stadia 2.0. So we'll see what that goes. But that would be very exciting if Stadia releases a Stadia 2.0 next year with some ray tracing and maybe some new capabilities, not only for their controller, but also capabilities for just games in general and the platform itself. One of the biggest things about cloud gaming is the ability for both users and companies to upgrade without the need to purchase or make a new console. So something that you can very easily, or at least easier than consoles, kind of upgrade as you go. If Stadia is smart, they should release their next gen, quote unquote, at the latest mid-2021. Otherwise, they will lag even further behind the current next gen consoles. What to expect? I think for Google to deliver on the promise of zero latency and low lagging and continue to expand into 4K across the board and go even into 8K when more TVs become widely available, and also ray tracing, would be something that is very important, especially for games like Cyberpunk and other games that are coming up probably next year, in the next couple of years. And also adding more flexibility to their streaming, maybe even adding capability for a webcam. If they added that, I wouldn't be so opposed to using live stream features for YouTube and just kind of streaming some games directly from Stadia to YouTube using a webcam, rather than using an entire wired and different adapters and different connectors. The next thing would be optimizing and polishing mobile data usage for playing the games anywhere with a solid data connection. We'll see how long it takes for Stadia to kind of optimize that. At the moment, it seems very unlikely that being able to play on your mobile device anywhere with data plan will be something that would happen in the next few months. It's probably going to take another year or two. But once we get there, I think it'll be amazing. They're headed into the right direction. So I think all it takes is some time and patience. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. What do you think about Stadia? And what are your thoughts on the future of it? So I'll see you next time. And don't forget to also subscribe. So bye-bye.